I believe that it fills a void that nobody else would fill just because all the other industry conferences, and you would know this better than anybody, Jeff, you've been to a bunch of them.
Oh, they're very exciting.
Yeah, they're and everything is based on, the operators, the regulators, the legislators, every single person except the most important component, which is the sports bettor.
The Business of Betting podcast is presented by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming industry. 4 out of the top 5 U.S. operators personalize player experiences with Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming industry. Learn more about Optimove by requesting a demo at optimove.com/businessofbetting. And if you like what you see, you will get your first month free.
All right. Welcome back to the Business of Betting podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Edelstein. You can catch me at ingame.com. And today we have somebody new to the sports betting industry, a gentleman by the name of Gadoon Kyrollos. Gadoon, good morning.
Good morning, Jeff. Thanks for having me, brother.
Of course, we're talking with Spanky, who I believe has been involved in the sports betting business since you were a young man. But, the first question I have for you today, Spanky, and I think it's a question on the minds of, millions of listeners today. What does your wife call you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Gadoon is a name that I was given. Then another name I'm given is Owen. So Gadoon, Owen, it's kind of like a derivation. So Owen is kind of a name I kind of had as growing up. Friends and close friends and family would call me. So she would actually call me Owen. And that's kind of a name that has stuck with like people that are really, really tight with me as a kid. But anybody in the industry would call me Spanky. And then new people now these days, obviously I don't introduce myself. I usually say I'm Owen, or I usually say I'm just, instead of Gadoon because it's hard to pronounce, I would say Gad, Gad. Even trying to say that, a lot of people are like, hey Gavin, hey Gordon, you know what I mean? So it just gets butchered all the time, but we figure it out.
All right, so you're walking down Fifth Avenue, somebody yells out one of the 4 things: Gadoon, Gad, Owen, or Spanky. Which do you think you turn around quicker for?
Anything else, I'm turning around except Spanky. If it's Spanky, I'm probably running away. Yeah.
That's great. All right. Well, you're a busy man. I'd say that you have your toes dipped into about every facet of the industry here. And it's true. I mean, I want to start, though, with Bet Bash. I'm sure you've told the story before, but humor me. What made you decide to start this? What made you decide to continue it? And what made you decide for this to become like the one and only premier event for a slice of the industry that nobody cares about, the bettor themselves?
Yeah, so Bet Bash was an idea that kind of during COVID, our first Bet Bash was in 2021. So right after all these lockdowns, actually that Bet Bash had to be in an outdoor rooftop in Jersey City because we couldn't have everybody that big of a crowd congregate indoors. So it was an itch that I wanted to scratch because I was sick of being cooped up just like everybody else, and I wanted to meet other sports betting enthusiasts. So it's kind of a proof of concept where I said, let's make this a one-night event and have people in Jersey City in a bar. I was born and raised in Jersey City, so it's kind of special for me. And I thought, okay, maybe we'll get 50, 100 people tops. Wound up being about 220, 230 people from all over the world to come in for this one-night event. And I'm like, wow. So other people actually had this thirst that they needed to quench, and I wasn't the only one. And that's when I said, okay, there's something here. So that's when I got the idea to, bring this thing to the next level, talk to Derek Stevens and talk to Matt Metcalf, who at that time was the director of sports betting at the Circa. And I said, I want to bring this thing to Circa and I want to make this a multi-day event. And Derek Stevens was on board, and then the rest is history. So that's the first part of the question. To continue, why do I keep going? Honestly, I don't. A lot of it's selfish reasons. We don't make money off the event per se, being an event planner and everything. In order to make it a valuable prospect for the customers, the event planner doesn't really make much money. There's not much money in it. And so we don't do it for that reason. However, the connections we've made over the years have been very lucrative. And the friendships that we've made over the years have been very prospering from them. And I enjoy that. And other people have told me, Spanky, this event has changed my life. This event has connected me, has gotten me a new job, has gotten me meeting different people that I would have never have met otherwise. So hearing stuff like that, I'm at a point right now in which I feel as if I have to continue Bet Bash, even if I wouldn't want to, just for, for the industry. And because, I believe that it fills a void that nobody else would fill, just because all the other industry conferences, and you would know this better than anybody, Jeff, you've been to a bunch of them.
Oh, they're very exciting.
Yeah, they're and everything is based on, the operators, the regulators, the legislators, every single person except the most important component, which is the sports bettor. It was a void it needed, and we're trying to bring all those other, the operators, regulators, we're trying to bring them all in to listen to what the bettor has to say, and that's the whole thing. That's kind of my whole mindset. Sorry for the long-winded answer. That's where we came to be. So
The American Bettor's Voice, is that like, would you say that's I don't want to say an offshoot, but is that like a direct result, you think, of Bet Bash?
the American Bettor's Voice was the brainchild actually of my colleague and CEO Richard Schutz, who came to me and says, we did Bet Bash, which is amazing. Richard Schutz has been to all Bet Bashes. We started the Sports Gambling Hall of Fame, which was also a great thing. And then now we need something to be an advocacy for the bettor. And he said this will be like the third leg of that three-leg stool, and it's an important thing. And we've been doing it now where we've been operating for a little over a year. Our board is incredible. We just had my colleague Adam Robinson, who just wrote an incredible piece and an article and did a lot of research on the tax implications. And we've consulted for different organizations in different states, and then we've helped. We're trying to help a lot of different regulators, legislators understand the landscape a little bit better and understand it from a bettorist point of view. I think in order to legislate or regulate effectively, you can't just hear things from the operator standpoint. You have to hear things from both sides of the counter, and that's where we come in. And given our experience and our whole board's experience, I believe we bring a lot to the table.
With all the stuff that you're doing industry wise, are you still finding the time to actually sit in front of your screens and put some money down?
We have now, we're almost, I think we might be at 20 employees. I lose count. But yeah, my primary earn will always be sports betting. And me personally, me betting, those days have long passed me by in the sense of me doing the day to day operations. I have an incredible staff that handles all that. Don't get me wrong, I'll still, sit in the chair and oversee things and I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty, but absolutely, betting though has allowed us to be able to go into these certain projects like Bet Bash, like Spot Odds, and to be able, like the Sports Gambling Hall of Fame or like the American Bettor's Voice. The sports betting has given me that avenue and opened those doors for me that otherwise would be, financially impossible to pursue. I'm always a sports bettor first, Jeff.
The idea behind sports betting, it's the playing field, pun intended, has changed often and often dramatically since you've been in the business. And, we're sitting in a massive potential change right now with prediction markets being the next, thing. Of all the things that you've seen from the past befalling to, the rise of the internet to prediction markets, and I'm sure things I'm forgetting, what would you consider to be like the biggest difference today as compared to when you got into the business?
Well, let me tell you, the more things change, the more they stay the same, as the old saying goes. Let me start off with saying how much for me the things are the same. At
Right.
the end of the day, Jeff, for a group like mine, we're looking to be able to find somebody that will book our bets and that will pay us and book our bets for a significant amount of money. That's all that matters, whether that be a prediction market, whether that be an exchange, whether that be a regulated bookmaker, an unregulated bookmaker, a street bookmaker, doesn't matter. As long as we get paid when we win, and as long as we could get enough down to satisfy our appetite, that will always be the case. We don't care. We welcome any and all competition when it comes to the operators, and we like, you know, different pricing. We want to be able to shop around, just like any consumer would want to be shopping around. So if you have all the different supermarkets, the more supermarkets, the better. You could just look, and find out what's on sale in this one and that one, and you'd be able to just buy different things from different places and always get the best price. That's what we're all about. That's always the underlying thing that will never change for us. What has changed over my career in this game? What's changed, honestly, Jeff, the most is the requirement to have to operate in shadows more so than ever, where it's so much, 15 years ago, I would have bookmakers that would book my bets and I could get down a good sum of money and they would all book me and they would never kick me out. And they'd all pay me and they know it was me. Now, very few people that know it's me are going to book me. So I have to rely on betting partners to be able to work around that. Again, that's always been the case, but it's just more so the case. Accounts are getting limited and 86th faster than ever. So you have to now change your methodology either to rely on betting partners or to somehow, some way convince the bookmaker that what you're betting is not a long-term winning strategy. Essentially, fool the bookmakers' internal algorithms to believe that they're booking a long-term loser when in fact, we're going to come away with the money at the end of the day. That's the biggest thing. But yeah.
Well, I want to talk about prediction markets for a second because I know I reached out to you a few weeks ago about a story I was working on prediction markets, and what you told me kind of surprised me in that you said that you and your team, you really haven't dove that deeply into it as of yet, and I'm kind of curious as to why that is.
Well, right now we have, thankfully, knock on wood, our appetite is able to be satisfied at the current
Gotcha.
state. So there's no need at this point to be able. Again, we probably should be involved more so, but we're happy with our ability to get down currently as it stands. That of course changes day to day, week to week, month to month. We will definitely, we probably should have pursued it earlier, but we will eventually. Thing is, if there's a good out there and there's a place that'll book my bets, we're eventually going to start being, we're going to be a customer, and we'll definitely explore that further.
So here you are. I want to talk about some of this stuff later, but you growing up in Jersey City, Rutgers graduate, math minded, Wall Street, and every interview I've ever heard from you or seen of you or read about you, you tell the story about being on the escalator and realizing that you're in the rat race here and you got to get out of the rat race. And that was like kind of like the big point in your life. You're about, I think, 23, if I'm not mistaken, around that age when you said, this is not the life I want. I want off this rat race. I want out of this maze. And that's when you decided that sports betting was going to be your future. So now we're looking, about a quarter century down the road. Did you trade one rat race for another?
Good point. Being an entrepreneur, it's people think, when you're an entrepreneur, oh man, that's it. You've lived the life and it's great. But as you allude to there, Jeff, you're still working 100 hours a week. You just get to choose which 100 hours a week you're working. So yes, I'm still but I enjoy, I'm able to choose who I work with. I'm able to surround myself with a great team. So yeah, I don't do it now for the money anymore. Luckily I'm financially stable. Don't get me wrong, I'm not allergic to making any more money. It's obviously fun and game. It's fun to make money, but the desire now is no longer let me just make as much money as possible. It's how do I make it so that I still enjoy what I do? I like going to work. I like the people that I'm working with. And I like to be able to somehow not just affect my life and affect those around me, but affect other people's lives with what I'm doing. And being a gambler, that's something that's missing, that's always been missing in the gambler's life. As a gambler for all these years, Jeff, when I go to work, and if I miss a day of work, and I've said this before, if I miss a day of work, nobody gives a shit. You know what I mean? The bookmaker's like, hey, where were you, Spanky, today? Nobody's calling me up, and or nobody's life is affected in a negative way if Spanky doesn't bet sports today. Whereas every other industry, you're working for the society. As a gambler, you're working for yourself, and that's a very lonely place to be. And that's why creating these things like Bet Bash and Spot Odds and all these tools and events, you take the loneliness out of it, you make it more of a community base, and you actually, help others while still making money, but you're still able to help others also reach their goals. And that's kind of very, very fulfilling for me.
I bet in a previous life, I was a newspaper columnist for about, 25 years or so. And when I would get a note or an email from a reader saying, oh, that column really made my day. I really got a good laugh. I felt like I was adding positivity into the world, right? Like I was a helper that day. You know what I mean? Whereas this industry, when I write a story, I don't know how much I'm actually helping move the world forward. And you're really speaking to something there that the life of a gambler, you're enriching yourself. And not only are you enriching yourself, but you're enriching yourself at the expense of others. Whereas with these other things that now you've jumped into, you are giving back. You are making other people's lives better as a result of work that you're doing.
You hit the nail right on the head, Jeff. And that's why, it's really helped complement the gambling that we're doing, because we're not just gambling anymore. We're also, doing other things. And listen, with spot odds, man, I'm not gonna lie, it's really nice making a nice earn, not having to, bet for a living, just solely. To be able to have that other source of income, have being a software provider essentially, or being an event planner, which is really not that much of a source of income. But I'm just saying it's nice to be able to have successful businesses in other facets without having to gamble, because being a gambler and making money as a gambler is something that not everybody could do, and it's something that not everybody could stomach, because I could work so hard for the entire week and we could lose money. And that sucks. That's something a lot of people can't handle psychologically. I know I had a hard time in the beginning to be able to swallow that, to be able to understand, to think long term. Very few people can't think like that. In any other job, you work hard, you put all your hours in, you want to get a paycheck at the end of the week. In the gambling world, I could work hard and do everything I can and do everything right, but I might have to pay my bookmaker at the end of the week, instead of getting a paycheck. So that's a very, very hard thing to be able to adapt to, and actually makes me a little bit tougher, I believe, that I could, you're just able to handle when life hits you with, shit happens in life all the time. You're able to understand that this too shall pass, and it's not going to be like this forever.
You bring something up that I did want to touch on, and if this is something that, I had warned you, there were some things I wanted to bring up that you may not want to talk to, but that this too shall pass, and like when life throws stuff at you, the gambler's mentality can be a massive help, and I found this in my own life. I have a daughter with autism. You've told me that you have a son with autism, and I'll speak to it, but I'll ask you first. How does that gambler's mentality help you navigate that world?
Again, God gives everybody different things, and everybody's dealt a different hand. You just have to know how to play that hand, and you play that hand to the best of your ability. Some people get dealt the full house, and some people don't have a pair, and everything in between. So you just have to be able to handle it, and you have to just accept that hand and understand that this is how you play that hand. And it's not, what you do with the hand, it's how you play and the journey, and going forward, to be able to try to live a fulfilling life and to make sure that the other people around you are fulfilled. So having a child with autism, it's difficult at first, but then once you start realizing, this is okay. It's not the end of the world. Every time, I'm about Catholic. You always think as a Catholic, you believe that everybody has a cross they have to carry. Jesus carried his cross, and everybody also has a cross. Nobody, it goes through life and they don't have some type of burden that they have to carry. And every time you think, oh my God, this burden is too heavy, it's just heavy enough that you can carry it. And you always have to know that, sure, there's going to be other people that have a lighter cross than you, and there's other people that are going to have a lot heavier cross than you. And you just have to know how to carry your cross. And also, sometimes you help others carry their cross. You help, and that's what it's all about. Because the more, I believe, the more you help others, others will help you. And try to be able to help each other in life, to try to bring each other up. And when you do that, you feel fulfilled, and you feel a sense of that you've lived a good life and you're doing the right thing. And then as a Christian, that's that's our ultimate goal, to do the right thing and receive eternal salvation. So.
I want to tell you, though, how it's kind of changed my view a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And I want to see if this has value to you. I've been gambling on and off, my whole life. I enjoy it, right? My wife, not a gambler, like polar opposite of a gambler. Like when we first started having a little bit of money that we could start putting away, I had to like convince her that no, a CD is going to be just fine. Like your money's safe, honey. She's very tight with it. So we're coming at this everything from two different angles. We have two other kids, not, typically developing, whatever. And I feel like as a culture, and this might be across other cultures as well, I can't speak to other cultures, but in America, it seems like we have a defined sense of right and wrong, of yes and no, of black and white, of 100 or 0, right? And I think a lot of our anxieties and agonizing stems from this, right? Where everything has to be either A or B. It can't be A and B. Everything has to be black and white. It can't be gray. We, in our own personal lives, we have to like go all the way or none of the way, and there's nothing in between. And I found that with my two other kids, when it comes to making decisions for them, it's relatively easy. It's kind of clear. Dad, can I stay out until 3 o'clock in the morning and drink beer? No, son, you can't. Right? It's obvious, right? With our daughter with autism, I feel like the decision matrix is different, right? Where there is no yes or no, there is no black or white. And there was a time a few years ago when we were thinking about sending her to a special needs school, right? Instead of the regular public school. And, we're kind of talking it through. We do the old pros and cons, and it's unclear. And a light bulb went off in my head. And I'm like, well, what's the lean? Literally, what's the lean here? That's the right decision. Because in gambling, any decision that you make in gambling, whether it's to hit on a soft 17 or take the Giants and the points, it's based on the data that you have available, and you make the best decision you can based on that data. It might be the right decision, it might be the wrong decision, but it's the decision that's based in the data, right? And I feel like most people don't make decisions like that. I feel like most people agonize and say, well, this is it, this is it, this is it. And they make that one decision, whether it's right or wrong. They won't make a decision until they're clearly in the 100 or the 0. Whereas I think gamblers think through life's choices differently.
I completely agree with everything you just said, Jeff. Sometimes people do get caught up in analysis paralysis type thing where you want to get as much data as possible, and you just keep trying to gather data. Meanwhile, you should have probably made the decision 3 decisions ago, and then you would have been better off the situation. So there is something to be said about doing as much research as possible, but there also you gotta choose, and like you said, you're gonna do the pros and cons, and then try to make that decision. And as a gambler, like you said, everything is you're trying to give probabilistically the best option for you or for whoever you're making that decision for, and it's never 100 or 0. Even going out on the street, I could be going out driving home today. It's not 100%. I don't get into a car accident. You know what I mean? Or I mean, not a 0%, I should say. But you do it, and every decision essentially that you make in life is kind of sort of a gamble. Some of them are just more obvious choices than others. When you look at it like that, and when you understand that some decisions that you make, once you're able to accept that some decisions that you make are going to end up being the wrong decisions, nobody bats 1,000. You know what I mean? So I think the ability to accept that wrong decisions are going to be made, and that you learn from those wrong decisions, and hopefully as you get older and get wiser, you start making more right decisions than wrong, then you get better and better at it.
I think a lot of your background, a lot of your current life, the giving back and the starting the Bet Bash and the American Bettor's Voice, and being a family man and raising 4 kids, it doesn't come out of nowhere. So tell us about life as little Spanky growing up in Jersey City. What was it like? What was the family like? How were you made?
Honestly, I had a very loving family. 2 brothers and sister, and mom and dad were together, forever, and our friends were there. But the environment in Jersey City, there's a lot of people that I one of my buddies died of a drug overdose when I was just 19 or 18, and then you hear other people get locked up, and a lot of people take the wrong path. It's just that the environment sucks you in. You know what I mean? I wasn't sure. I went to church, but I wasn't. Did I bend the law or even break the law several times? Yeah, that's just how it is. And sometimes you just get lucky, and it's sometimes you just God's grace. You don't get caught, and you learn from your mistakes. And gambling was always a part of everything. You know what I mean? I used to run a 3-card Monte game, and then I used to, learn to hustle, and I didn't think that that was wrong at the time. I'm just, giving somebody a fair chance, but I would practice that and do that really well, and then that's how I would make money. And we'd run poker games, and we just always gamble and always try to hustle. You know what I mean? And that's what it was all about. And and then you get hustled, so you learn how to hustle, you learn to get hustled, and then you slowly start to learn that it's not the right thing to take advantage of somebody and be a person that where you're not fully disclosing what's going on, and you start just not being a punk kid anymore. That's pretty much the best way to say it. And you start becoming a man. My older brother died in a car accident when I was 16 years old. He was like a father figure to me. So that kind of started me to become a man. And that was a big moment in my life. And that's when I realized, or started to realize, that I didn't have to, you know, I should try to earn in a way that was honorable, and try to make a living in an honorable way. Never did I think I was going to be a sports bettor. You don't think that. I thought, I studied finance, computer science, worked at Deutsche Bank, worked on Wall Street. I thought I was going to be a Wall Street guy and then do that. And this sports betting thing just sucked me in. And that's just what happened. That was the road that I went down in life, and no regrets, but you deal with a lot of good people, but a lot of bad people in the industry, especially in the unregulated world. But that's in every industry, and people, oh my God, you deal with a lot of, bad guys and gangsters and mobsters and all this stuff. Yeah, but there's a lot of on Wall Street. There's a lot of gangsters. They're not dressed as gangsters. They're not recognized as gangsters. There's shysters and people. Not every in every facet in every industry. There's bad guys, and they're just some of them wear suits. And that's what you got. You start to realize that, and you just know, just to treat others the way you want to be treated, conduct yourself in a professional manner, and just do the right thing. And then if you always do the right thing, that's my mom. It's something that my mom has always told me, just do the right thing, treat others the way you want to be treated. I know it sounds so cliche and it's such a obvious thing, but if you start doing that and you live life like that, that's I owe a lot of my success and my reputation that's been built on my mom telling me to just treat others the way you want to be treated, and just do the right thing. And that's something that I obviously hold till this day.
When you were running around Jersey City as a kid, did you ever see yourself at Deutsche Bank?
Yeah, listen, I always had dreams, of when you're a kid, you don't know if you're going to be a banker or anything like that. You want to be different things. I thought I was going to be a pro wrestler at one point, actually. You know what I mean? I actually went to wrestling school for 6 months, studied
No
under
shit.
Canada's greatest athlete, Iron Mike Sharp. I don't know if,
Yeah, of course.
yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah,
Where you
Iron,
had the
yeah, exactly.
forearm.
So yeah, perfect. So he ran a school out of Asbury Park, and I was there for 6 months, and I was hell bent on becoming a pro wrestler when I was 17, 18 years old. And I would go to his school twice a week. I'd be the first guy in, the last guy out. And then it got to the point in which I remember coming home in so much pain. And my brother would tell me, my other brother would, "What are you doing? God blessed you with brains. You don't need to try to make a living with your body. You should try to make a living with your mind." And when he said that to me, it just hit me all of a sudden. I'm like, shit, I love this so much. I think I could be really good at it, but I just can't. The pain was just too much. I just wasn't built for something like that. And
You think we're headed down a heel or baby face route, you think?
I was a baby. I was a baby face because I was getting my ass kicked all the time. So I remember this guy choke slammed me so hard, man, and knocked the wind out of me, and my back was aching for weeks and weeks. And I still have back pains from those days of in that
Huh.
school, because the ring was as hard as a rock. And my first day at wrestling school, if anybody else, I would hold the top rope and I would just have to fall for 6 hours straight or whatever it was. It was just absolutely insane. And you learn how to fall, and you'd hit the back of your head a few times, and then you gotta shit, you better keep your head up. It was just a difficult thing, but I wanted it so bad, but I didn't want it bad enough that I realized, I said, man, my body's not fit for something like this. And that's kind of when I went a different route. But yeah, I've had a lot of failures, Jeff. A lot of these stories I'm just telling you now.
I don't know if I wouldn't consider them failures. They're steps on the ladder to.
No, 100%. And that's why, I have such an admiration for pro wrestlers, and it's something that I've always loved as a kid. And I was at WrestleMania 1, been a fan for all my life. And I have such an admiration when people say, oh man, that stuff is all phony and stuff. And just tell you that the pain is not phony. It's as real as it
Right.
can be. And it's definitely something that I definitely admire anybody and have the utmost respect for anybody that takes on that profession.
I bet. Did you have a name picked out? Yeah, I'm sure you did. You had to.
Yeah, I was a skull thrasher, but that was. I didn't really have. Again, I was 6 months. I was still training. I didn't have any matches or anything like that. So if anybody's trying to YouTube me, it's not going to exist. Back then, they didn't. In the school, there was no videos or nothing like that. But yeah, it was a good moment. It was definitely a good learning experience. And Iron Mike Sharp is one of the best characters, and was a really really great teacher, great coach.
Your last name, I'm guessing. I'm going to guess, but it's Greek.
Yeah, I have so many things. I have such a mix of different things. I'm one of those mutts. But yeah, there's so many things in me. Edelstein, this is
Well, it's a German name. I mean, I was actually just talking about this in the last podcast. It means gemstone, right? Which either means there's some idiot Edelstein gave away the family fortune at some point, or we were just cutting stones a million years ago. And again, I'm repeating myself for listeners, but in Germany, the word schmuck means jeweler. So all over Germany, you see signs that say Schmuck Edelstein.
that's funny. That's great. That's great.
That's my story there. So when you were growing up in Jersey City, were there other people, of Greek background, or
There was everything. There was everything. Jersey City was just recently rated the second most diverse city in the United States of America, right behind Houston. We had everything. You had to get along with all races. You just learned to do it, and you just learned to accept. There was no such thing of, a lot of people mix racism with stereotypes. You just have to know that there's just different things and understand that. When I was growing up, most of the races intermingled, you know what I mean? Whereas the generation before me, a lot of the races kind of stuck together. you had to learn how to adapt and interact with everybody, and it was great. You know what I mean? That's why whenever I'm fortunate that I could talk to any person of any background, any ethnicity, and I feel very comfortable no matter who it is because I've encountered that growing up. I've had everybody, any type of friend you could think of, any race, I've dealt with them. And, again, you build stereotypes in your head on what that person, because it's just human nature, how this person is or that person is, or, you know what I mean? Obviously, you can't put everybody in the same bucket, but these are the things you just interactions with, just like in anything, oh, yeah, this is the shrewd businessman, or this is the shisty salesman, or whatever it is. You just think, is this guy going to be just like this guy I knew? And then you kind of build that thing, and you build like kind of a database that you reference in your head to try to put these people in certain buckets. And it's kind of what's worked for me.
As a couple of Jersey guys here, I feel safe saying this to you. To grow up in this area, in the New York metropolitan area, Philly metropolitan area, you have to work very, very, very hard to be a racist because there's everywhere. You have to work very hard. I don't care who you are, because at any given moment, you're right. There's 20 different ethnicities, 18 different gender, like whenever it is, it's there. It's here for the taking. It's not like you're in the middle of Iowa where it's just white people as far as the eye can see.
100%, 100%. No, you're right. And it's the one thing I always, I value so much is I'm very proud of being born and raised in Jersey City, because that's something that it's a feather in my cap. It's something that it's a street knowledge that I've built that I couldn't learn in books, that I couldn't learn at school. Just interacting, getting mugged, understanding how that process works, on several occasions, actually, partaking. And again, I'm not proud to even admit this, but, doing bad things like that. And it's just something you learn, and something that, you just try to learn right from wrong and stuff. And
Yeah.
no, it's something I would never trade in for the world.
I'm first generation suburbia, right? I grew up in suburbia. My dad was the one who grew up, in the meaner streets, as it were. And I don't want to give away where you live, but I know where you live. I know the town. Looking at your own kids today, do you feel like that they're missing a little something by not growing up?
Oh, 100%. Big time, big time. I was growing up a suburban kid is very different. When my kids were younger, we'd have to set up these quote unquote play dates. As growing up in Jersey City, I'm just going outside, you know what I mean? And you just go on a block, and whoever's out there, that's who you're playing with that day, and that's it.
Yeah.
So there's no, where the moms are talking, oh yeah, let's go meet at this place or that place. Nah, it's a big difference. So you kind of just learned on your own, and you set up your own play dates and call people on the phone and figure out who was available, who wasn't. And sometimes you just go outside, and whoever was out there, that's who you were hanging out with for the day. So
Do you keep in touch with your friends from back in the...
I have friends that I've known, most of my close friends I've known since I was between 5 and 10 years old. Those are the guys I still hang out with. Yeah.
I'm pretty much in the same boat myself. Again, a couple of Jersey guy questions for you here. I feel like New Jersey's always gotten a reputation as being, like the armpit of America, all this nonsense. But living in New Jersey, we know that the exact opposite is true. I can't think of another place in the country I'd rather live, save for the months between like January and March. I could do without. Would you ever leave the state?
That's a great question. And honestly, Jeff, me and my wife have talked about it. We love it. You know what I mean? We love having the having the suburban lifestyle, but having to be able to go into New York or Philly within just a hop, skip, and a jump away. It's something that I just know and I'm familiar with. And all my friends and my family is here and stuff, and my wife's family is here. So in the short term, definitely not. Who knows what 10, 15 years will bring.
It's the food, man. I can't. The idea of being able to say, man, I'd really like some Ethiopian tonight, or, I could go for some Greek, and not be able to find it within 15 miles, that scares the shit out of me.
Yeah, that's a good point. It really is. Like Vegas would be something I would consider, because Vegas does have a very unbelievable culinary depth there, and entertainment depth, and also because the gambling thing is just there for me. So that's something I've considered, but those summer months are just absolutely brutal.
Speaking of Vegas, I know for a fact, I'm not going to name names, that there's a pizzeria, or I should say pizzeria, a place that does pizza in Vegas. They import their water to make the dough from the Delaware River.
Amazing. Yeah, there's a website that sells New York City tap water, and it's sold around the world, and they do it.
Yep.
It's unbelievable. It's crazy. A lot of people, and the bagels around here, they say it's the water. It's something. I don't anticipate leaving anytime soon, Jeff.
We won't tell anybody else how great it is, but I've been enjoying it. The only time I did live in New Jersey, I went to the University of Maryland for a year. That was it. Other than that, this is where I've been. I've toyed with the idea of leaving. I've looked at other places, but just, I don't know. The opportunities, it's the food. It's the food.
That's it. Period. End the story. Period.
Very good. All right, Spanky, man, I appreciate you taking a few minutes to hang out with me today. Great stories. Great talking to you. We'll have you back on many times, I'm sure.
Well, I want to congratulate you on taking over the duties here on the business of betting. Am I one of your first guests? I'm not sure. I don't know.
I believe you're number 2.
Beautiful. Well, listen, congratulations, Jeff, on doing that. I've been on this podcast when Jake first started it way back in the day. And Jeff, I know we've been friends for a while, and I appreciate our conversations. I know you've done some incredible articles, and you're an incredible writer. Congratulations on taking over the reins here. You do a great job, and you've brought about some stuff in me that I've never talked about anywhere, and that's really awesome that you're able to do that. Thank you for that. And from one Jersey guy to another, I appreciate it.
You got it. We'll do this on site at Great Adventure next time. How about that?
I love it. I love it. You got it. Or maybe Action Park if it was still open. Remember that?
Talk about back injuries. All right. Spanky, take it easy, man. Thank you.
Have a good one, buddy. Take it easy. Yeah.
The Business of Betting podcast is presented by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming industry. 4 out of the top 5 U.S. operators personalize player experiences with Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming industry. Learn more about Optimove by requesting a demo at optimove.com/businessofbetting. And if you like what you see, you will get your first month free.